So, welcome to an extremely enigmatic and lovely chap called John Williams, who I've come across online a lot. And I knew that you run a company, or still do run a company called the Ideas Lab. And I've known about you for many, many years. I used to run a company called Barking Productions, and I run a company called Second Curve. But in the general cut and thrust of stuff, I've been aware that the Ideas Lab looks really, really interesting. You've got a pioneering program. I see what you did here, which is called the Pioneer Program. You're also a best-selling author of a work that started off as Screw Work Break Free, which made me think of Freddie Mercury. I need to break free, because you were trying to escape the sort of beige, flat landscapes and get people to be much more connected to purpose, pleasure and play, if you like. You were very flattering in that you allowed me to become a Facebook friend recently, and I really enjoyed looking at your profile that you play e-drums, you paddle kayaks, and you share memes. I am going to shut my face and let you talk in a minute, but you're very, very welcome, and thank you for saying yes. Welcome to the Good Listening To Show, Clearing, John Williams.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you're extremely welcome to be here. And I'm going to bounce you through the storytelling construct of this is the clearing, where all good questions come to get asked, that you'll find, and all good stories come to be told. And then it's all to play for, because there's lots of really lovely, juicy storytelling metaphors, which hopefully will appeal to you. And I'll bathe you in the sunlight as we take you through the clearing itself. We shake your tree to see which storytelling apples come out. And as I say, it's all to play for. There's alchemy, gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and then a cake. Hurrah! And as it's just coming up to sort of 20 to 4 of an afternoon here in the UK, you may appreciate the cake I sort of flop in your face at the end.
Sounds good.
So let's get you going. When somebody doesn't have any particular connection to you and just turns to you, imagine we're on a sort of long flight or something, and they say, "What do you do?" which is that clunky question we've all experienced. But what's your favourite way, John Williams, of answering or indeed avoiding that question?
Yeah, I'm not very good at that question. I normally get a bit tense, but I default by saying I'm an author and name the most recent book, F Work, Let's Play, because that tends to pique people's interest, and then you can get into a conversation. I could also say I help people turn their ideas into successful businesses, books and brands. And particularly we're focused on helping people create a business they love. So I guess that's a decent summary.
I love that. And the hook of F Work Let's Play, and of course the book is F*CK, and it's it really is a good hook, because it is about a bit of joyful irreverence in let's not just all go in the same direction. You, I think, by design have been a deliberate maverick in liking and enjoying, almost, I suppose, coming full circle, kayaking upstream, if you like.
Yes. Yeah. I think the reason for the strong title is because I wanted to make a strong statement, and work has changed a lot, and I don't think everybody's up to speed on it. I don't think people have quite realized that you can make a living out of anything. Now, some things are harder than others. I'm not pretending you can just press a button and suddenly make a great living, knitting tea cozies or whatever you can, but whatever you want to do, if you're determined enough, you can make a living out of it. And the book goes through all the different options and why some things are harder than others and what you can do about that. But it's an amazing time to be alive, actually. And I really don't think people have got it. I think a lot of times people take their career constructs from their parents, who are a generation behind. Certainly, I'm a bit older, so my mum's view of jobs was pretty conventional, and I think also we take it from our peers, and often the masses. The massive, it's a rather cruel term again, but broadly speaking, people say, well, like, what you're doing is weird, what you're doing is unusual, almost like, why can't you be normal? Well, normal, most people kind of moan about their life. They're not satisfied with it and they moan about it. And so, no, it's not normal to actually say, I want to do something that's very different. But then being normal isn't all that hot. So that's kind of my take on it. That's hence the strong title for the book.
Yes. And to the big news that I noticed on a comic thing you were uploading on Facebook yesterday is that your book has gone to number 13 in the Heathrow Airport charts. So
Yeah. It
congratulations.
basically in the W. H. Smith has a section called travel, and it's not about travel books. It means that it's the stores they have in train stations and airports. And my book was Business Book of the Month at the end of last year in those stores. And they actually shift probably more books than just about anybody else offline, other than the monster that is Amazon. And since then, it's still in the top 20. And I keep hoping we're going to see everyone allowed to go on holiday, so they actually, we get even more people getting exposed to the book and seeing it in the top 20.
Yes, because fundamentally you want people to be thundering past your stand where it's sitting there
Yeah,
very
basically. Yeah, the
enigmatically,
footfall is not great right now, but it's
shall
it's
we
still
say.
doing well.
And indeed, it's very pioneering of itself, because in the last year, particularly, as we know, there's been such we have had no choice but to flex and be adaptable in how we're now, what workflow is like. But I think your book was pretty much ahead of that curve as well, if I may. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so one of the fundamental principles is that you don't need a 5-year plan anymore. In fact, there's no point. Originally, I quoted Eric Schmidt in the first version of this book, but I took it out because it's a bit of an old quote, and I put another one in instead. But Eric Schmidt's one is good. He was the CEO of Google for a long time. And he said, we don't have a 5-year plan. We don't have a 2-year plan. We don't have a 1-year plan. We basically just have a mission, and we do whatever's necessary, which is to index all the world's information, or it was at least at the time he was CEO. And we just execute on that every day. And what you can do is you can use what's sometimes known as iteration. You can basically, in entrepreneurship, it's different from having a job. You can put something out into the world, take your best shot at it. It's the same actually in artistic endeavors, like maybe a podcast or writing a blog or something. And you put your best effort out into the world, and you see how people respond to it, and you fine tune what you're doing until it really lands, until you hit that sweet spot I talk about in the book of you're enjoying it, it's using the best of your skills, and other people love it and may understand why they need it. So when you get that sweet spot, you've got a business you love, basically.
And there's quite a nice historical sort of precedent for that as well. It's sometimes called the ikigai, isn't it? It's that epicentric point of the sweet spot, as you say.
Yeah, yes, they talk about that as well. There's multiple versions of it. I mean, one of my favorite quotes in the book is Aristotle, and he says, where your deep joy and the needs of the world meet, something like that. No, where your talents and the needs of the world meet, there lies your vocation. So there's a quote, it's 2,300 years old.
Yes.
And he's talking about finding a sweet spot between your best abilities and what the world needs. And I'm adding on to that because perhaps people didn't have as much flexibility back then, 2,300 years ago, to create their own living. I'm adding on to that, that actually has meaning and that you enjoy.
And there's another lesser known Aristotelian quote where he's complaining about young people of today not having any respect for their elders.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So time immemorial does repeat.
Millennials. Yeah.
And by the way, I think you flattered me slightly in assuming you were older than me. I'm 58. I don't quite know how you are, but how old are you?
I'm 55, so I'm younger.
So I'll take the compliment. Thank you, John Williams.
Oh, you should do.
So let's bring you into the structure of the Good Listening To show and podcast. Clearing then. So first of all, John Williams, what is a clearing like, metaphorically or literally for you? Where do you go to get clutter-free, innovative and able to think?
I go to a number of different places. I go for a walk. I live by the canal. It's quite nice around here in East London. And I go for a walk. I go and sometimes sit in a cafe and get myself a very strong coffee, put some music on. That's if I'm in the mood for being G'd up, it's mostly electronic music I listen to. It'll be some abrasive piece of electronica and moderately abrasive. And the other thing I do is, there's a few things I do. I take naps. That can help.
You're a man after my own heart. I'm a samurai power napper. I guess.
Yes, so am I. And it was Winston Churchill that said, you should take a nap in the middle of the day. He says, don't kind of mess around. You got to take your clothes off and go to bed and close the window. So he really went for it. But he said, what it does, it gives you effectively two beginnings of the day. Two of those days when you you kind of come to it fresh. So I use some of that, and I also do things like I sometimes do free writing, and sometimes I talk to video for something. I don't know if other people do this, but on the Mac I use the Photo Booth app, and I record video. And there's something about talking, watching myself talk, that holds my attention enough that it has a similar process to writing the morning pages, which you're probably
Yeah.
familiar with, which is stream of consciousness writing to find out what you're thinking and feeling and find solutions to problems that are bugging you and that kind of thing.
So you
So
like to let your thinking unfold, but to the FaceTime app so that it externalizes it, and then you get to watch it for your own feedback.
well, I actually don't watch it. It's just a completely weird thing. But there's something I don't really watch it back, or very rarely. It's something about watching me on screen talking just feels, because I could just stare out to the ducks and talk to them, but for some reason that doesn't work. But when I'm looking at myself on the screen, it seems to just do something in my brain where I pay attention, and it feels like it feels the same as writing in free form
Yeah.
when you're doing it, as a written process.
That's very relatable. The sort of externalization.
Yeah,
It's not just whether one is introvert or extrovert, but I like the fact that it's about externalizing,
yeah.
letting your thinking get outside of yourself onto some other platform, which is very interesting.
Mm.
Okay, so if I may, I'm going to arrive at your clearing. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say, I figured coffee may
Mm.
feature heavily because your profile picture has a very big red coffee cup.
Yeah.
So I wondered if red is your favorite color, actually.
Well, I could show you parts of my kitchen. It's a bit of a mess at the moment, but there's lots of red. I went with a red theme on the devices, but no, normally it's a blue, I would say. Um, but that was a photo shoot by a woman who started her photography business on one of my courses, and it's called Hey
Ah,
Saturday. She normally takes dating photos. In fact, I can't remember. Well, I think we were doing photos for the book, I can't remember, maybe she was doing dating photos for me, but anyway, that was the photo that ended up in the back of the book in the end.
so she's a pioneer alumni, if that's the
Well,
right.
she was a pioneer of another course. Yeah, that is actually the photo that you're talking about.
Yes, showing our
It
wonderful
was,
watchers because we're straddling many platforms. This is a multifaceted
yeah.
thing. Thank you.
True. So
That's
you
the
may not
picture
be
I
able
meant.
to, I'm showing a picture, but this was taken at what is now part of Soho House, which I use as my workspace.
I've
Um,
been there before, so next time I'm in there, I'm not a member, but maybe if I gate crash again, I'll look out for you. So we're going to arrive now with a tree in your clearing. So if you like, I can wedge your tree right in the center of your extra large coffee cup, if you like. But I'm going to arrive a bit sort of waiting for Godot-esque. I'm going to arrive in a clearing with a tree. So I'm going to shake your tree now to see which storytelling apples fall out, because I'm really intrigued in the story behind the story as to what makes the man John Williams the thinker that you are and the maverick that you are. And I mean that as a compliment. So it's the exercise, which is called 5 4 3 2 1, where you've had 5 minutes or as long as you've needed before I managed to get hold of you to think about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and borrowed from the film Up. That's a bit, oh, squirrels, what's never going to fail to grab your attention. And then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you, John Williams, author of F asterisk CK work, Let's Play. That we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. So a lot of information, but it's your tree to interpret and shake and crunch on the apples as you see fit. So over to you.
should I just pick one of those?
Well, just let's
Or
go for 4 things that have shaped you.
oh, 4 things. My dad died when I was a baby in a car accident, and I think that has had. I write about it in the beginning of the book, and it's had a big impact because he was only 34, so I'm 20 years older than he was at the time, and it's kind of. A lot of people live with this nice idea that they're going to live until they're 90 years old and they're going to die in their sleep painlessly next to the person that they love. And maybe that will happen. But I was disavowed of that idea being an inevitability very early on. And I think it made me, it gave me a drive to have a life that has meaning to me. It's not, I can't pretend that I've sorted, I take every brave choice I possibly could. but it's allowed me. People wondered how I walked out of a really well-paid job at Deloitte when I couldn't guarantee I was going to get some work, but I was trying to get to replace it. And and then I quit. I used to do broadcast consultancy, and then when I left that, I started something else. I didn't really know how that was going to work, and it took a while, and there was a few hiccups, but it did. And people think that's very brave, but I just felt like there was no choice, because I couldn't tolerate the idea of spending 40 hours plus a week in something that didn't have any meaning to me. And I didn't find meaning in Deloitte. It was kind of exciting the first few months, and my friends all joined. We joined as a team, and we were setting up a new kind of department. But it in the end, it wasn't for me.
And if I may, you said you had understandably disavowed of that notion of the stereotype of longevity and our passing. And you said you lost him when you were a baby. I mean, was this before you could even bond with your father? I'm trying to ask, if I may, how
I
old
was
you
6
were.
months old. Yeah.
Wow. Gosh.
So that has a big effect. And I think it's just, I mean, here I am, 20 years older, and so than he was when he died. So I'm not doing too badly. I think that I also had a lot of medical stuff happen when I was a child. And I think that, so I came from a place of learned helplessness, if you know that term,
Yeah.
where you kind of break someone's spirit, and as a result, they become depressed. The term is from Martin Seligman's early work with dogs, where he did some very unpleasant things to them. But it was a really important discovery that he got out of that, which is about learned helplessness. But if you break someone's spirit, then they don't get up again, even when they can. They become sort of lifeless and depressed and passive, and don't believe they can have what they want. So I had to get over that.
If I may, it's the same construct of an elephant growing up tethered to a post.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
matter
it's that kind of thing, but only if you kind of hit the elephant every so often. So it usually involves unpleasant experiences along the way, or being. It's a more extreme version of that story, of that kind of.
And how does the learned helplessness apply to what you then did as your choices? Because there you are, disavowed, you're carpe dieming because life is short and unexpected. So I was just interested in the connection to the learned helplessness as you experienced it.
Well, so I had to kind of work out how to make things happen in my life, because it wasn't my natural instinct. And there's natural entrepreneurs who kind of who do have unbelievable confidence and just decide, I'm going to make this thing happen, and they just push through unbelievable results. That was not me at all. So I had this kind of guiding principle of, I don't want to waste my life. But aside from that, I was bloody terrified most of the time. And it was just the unwillingness to settle that really made it worth persevering, until I had to just learn all the things that, natural entrepreneurs sometimes seem born with these kind of skills of selling, of marketing, of how making things happen, of managing their time. I had none of that. I mean, just none of it. And I had to learn it all, which makes me a good author for people who are beginners, right? And who also aren't natural entrepreneurs.
And there's a sort of guiding beacon of purpose I'm feeling that you're always pulling towards. Does this feel purposeful? Therefore, where shall I commit my time, my energy, my passion, and my engagement?
Yes. And and one of the things that has meaning and feels purposeful is to help people who are where I was 20 years ago, or whatever it might be. And so that they don't have to kind of waste as much time as I did learning how to do it, and they can actually kind of have more success right from the beginning.
And nor, as I understand, do you like to languish in your current quest either, because I read recently that you're deciding to no longer do the Pioneer program and do something else instead. So you're thinking about, in my framing of it's this idea of a second curve where your curve wanes, and what do you do to attach to your next curve? So you're interested in what's next, interestingly, as well.
Yeah, I think I think that was driven by a number of things, and the Pioneer program was a group program I ran to help people launch and market one thing successfully, like a course, a program, a workshop, something they do with corporations, whatever it might be. Usually, people whose product was their contents of their own brain, like they're an expert in something, even if they don't think of themselves as an expert, and that was very successful, and it was going well. But I felt like I wanted to do something that allowed me to be more creative, which is always one of the guiding lights, actually, of my work. And I felt I could be more creative doing one-to-one work with people. And now I've got this really weird, broad mix of people: a clutter consultant, somebody who works in animal facilities and wants to look after the staff who look after the animals, somebody who is formerly in the military and helps protect facilities in the Middle East from terrorist attack. And I'm working with all these different people and numerous others as well to create a brand and a business that's unique. That there isn't like, oh, they're one of those things.
These aren't people you're coaching. These are people you've brought into your domain.
No, these are people I'm coaching. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know whether you were trying to find a new product together. Yes.
So I'm working one-to-one with them. So basically the offer now is just me working one-to-one people, which is a lot higher price point for people, but for people who have potential to make a lot of money back, that's fine. So that just gives me more creative fulfillment. And particularly I worked historically partly because I was a beginner. I've been doing this business 15 years now in some form or other. Even when I was at the beginning, I was doing it alongside other things. Because I was always an entrepreneurial beginner, and I was working with beginners at the start. Historically, I've got a lot of big people who haven't started their business yet in my crowd, in my following. And the problem with that is there's a limit to how creative you can be, because a lot of the work is helping people to learn the basic entrepreneurial skills of persistence and thinking in terms of the customer and so on. Now I can teach all those things, but they take such a long time.
Yes.
You don't get to do the fun bit I want to do, which is like, oh, you're already really good at this thing. You're already working for yourself. Let's package that up, put a marketing spin on it, and now you'll make 2, 4, 10 times the amount of money. You'll get press. You'll be famous in your field. And that's more fun to me.
So it's a bit like you want to be more at the cutting edge now of innovating together and leaping off together, rather than always pulling people back up the ascension to the mountain and to sort of get them up to the ledge, if you like.
Yeah, my favorite thing, which I know get bored of, is creating cool stuff and helping other people create cool stuff.
Nicely put. I assume you've written that down.
I normally don't use the word stuff. I normally use another word beginning with S, but I'm being polite here because it's just...
Bless you for that. We're still in the canopy of your tree, and this is going beautifully, by the way, and we're coming on to alchemy and gold later. And if I may, you're giving me this by the bucket load anyway, but back into the canopy of your tree. Anything else that shaped you?
Yeah, I think science, actually. I'm a big, science and psychotherapy, strange mix. And the science is because when I was 12 years old, I just started, I don't know why, but I just wanted to know how the world worked. And so I started reading books about chemistry, physics, biology. And then I moved on, after I'd ripped through all the kind of natural sciences, I went on to psychology and psychotherapy and how humans work. And, but I was also into technology. So I got into, because I became a computer programmer for the first 10 years of my career. And, but anyway, I've always had that passion for psychology and science. And I run a Facebook group right now called Humanity versus Corona. And it's just a hobby project. There's 300 and something people in it. It's just not huge. And we just talk about the latest science on beating coronavirus and the vaccines and stuff like that. Good news from the world of science that's evidence-based. So it's very rare to find people who go down that. This is a good lesson in niching, right? Which is something I'm always teaching. There are people who are evidence-based that share all the evidence, some of which will scare the willies out of you and make you not want to, like, people are still saying, we don't know if Indian variant has any, the vaccines give us any protection from the Indian variant from COVID. And I go like, I bet they do. And it turns out, of course, they do. But
Yes.
it's like, stop saying we have no idea if this is going to kill everybody. And so you have the people who've got all the evidence, but who talk in that kind of language. And then you have all the people who want to look on the bright side and don't want to listen to the evidence.
And what's the name of your group again?
It's called Humanity versus Corona.
And can I congratulate you for your more intellectual thrust? My response was to form the group called #LolVirus, which is just to throw a lot of
No, I like that. I like that.
comedy.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
when I noticed you'd like to share the odd meme too, I was thinking this is going to be a very interesting conversation. So, but I like.
Yeah, no, I love memes. And anyway, that's somewhere where I just it's just a sort of passion project, and it's to keep us all sane during the, it's obviously things are better now, but things were pretty dark a year ago when I formed it.
And by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I found a quote that just really stimulated me about comedy as catharsis in times of adversity, which is why I started. I know this isn't about me, but it's a lovely quote, which is, we have to laugh because laughter, as we already know, is the first evidence of freedom.
Yes.
Boom. So I like that.
Well, there's a great book by John Cleese and Robin Skinner about family therapy. And the very last line is something like, I think it's when Robin Skinner's doing couples therapy, and John Cleese says to him, and I believe what happens in the final session. He goes, and then I laugh at them. And he goes, and if I know they can take it, I know the therapy's done and they can leave. And it's like, when you can, at the point you've got humor about your situation, you've got a chance and you've got a perspective on it. So this is why I'm very, very passionate about comedy. I did stand-up comedy for a little while. Amateur comedian.
I don't know if you know this, John, but I run a comedy improvisation company in Bristol called Instant Wit with someone called Stephanie Weston. So it's all good.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. I've done an improv course, and I did a comedy course in Soho with Logan Murray, who's quite a well-known teacher.
And I do a wonderful workshop in France called lesuranglais.com once a year, and it's called Instant Wit Laughter Lab. So I'll tell the audience about that, but I'll tell you about it next time it happens. It's not happened in the last year because of the zombie apocalypse, obviously, but it's coming back. And it's to explore the wonderful, liberating mindset of yes and. Go figure.
Oh, yes, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
I think, and sorry if I interrupted you there, we're into now 3 things that inspire you. If there's any overlap, don't worry, because this is all very inspirational, what you're saying anyway. But what inspires you if you're asked to pick 3 things?
I think, what I've noticed is that if I want to have good ideas for books in particular, because I'm working on a 4th book at the moment, and but also, for anything in general, for marketing, for the business, the 2 things that really generate, start ideas bubbling, are reading other books. So books always stimulate my ideas for other ideas in a way that reading articles don't. Reading little bits and snacks of things on social media and even on blog posts don't really do it. Deep blog posts maybe, but definitely the little snacky bits on Twitter and whatever don't do it. And in fact, I need to not fill every moment staring at my phone, which is quite hard because I quite like scrolling through Facebook until it broke for me the other day. It's basically.
Well, you broke Facebook, or you broke your phone.
I don't know if I'm convinced Mark Zuckerberg's running some wild experiment where he basically doesn't show me any of my friends' posts, and trust me, I've checked every setting, and I'm pretty techie, and it's something broken.
You've got Mark Zuckerberg on your back.
Well, apparently he did this. He ran this little experiment where he showed certain kind of posts to people to see if it made them depressed. That was one of the little experiments they ran, allegedly, a few years ago, actually.
I think I might have seen some of those posts.
Yeah, I know. So, and they prove that it did. Like, if you show happy posts, it makes people happy. If they show sad posts, it makes people sad. So, so that's, and then the other thing is staring out the window, I think, is quite important. And again, you have to resist. I have to resist talking to myself.
Is that being a school daydreamer? Or were you just always drifting off outside?
Yeah, I got a picture I shared on Facebook yesterday or something of supposedly babysitting my cousin, but my brother's actually holding him. He's just had his 50th birthday, but he's a baby in this photo, and I'm just like staring off into space like this.
That's
So
John.
yeah, I've been doing that for the last 50 years.
Well, there's something about it that works. So wherever you're drifting off to, I think people are following, going,
Yeah,
"Oh, what's he looking at?" And then sort of
yeah.
squirrels following you where your squirrels are, which
Well,
is
and that's how you find, if you want to be a pioneer. There's a good tip from Brian Eno on this. Brian Eno, the musician, producer, thinker, political activist. He he said he said that basically, well, this is my summary of how he works. He knows himself really well, and he recognizes things in himself that other people won't accept in themselves when they feel it. So he noticed, for instance, in the 1970s, I think it was, uh, that he was putting on music and then kind of ignoring it and doing other things. Whereas the representation of music in the 60s and 70s was, teenagers would run up to the hi-fi, stick on a record, and then just sit there and kind of like intensely, I don't know, stare at it or something, if they weren't dancing. And he said, actually, he knew he was putting the music on and wandering around and hoovering. And then he also had this moment, famously, when he had a broken leg or something like that. And a friend came to visit him in hospital and brought him a piece of classical music. I think it was Pachelbel's Canon or something.
ah, yes.
And slapped it on the hi-fi and then walked out before realizing that the volume was so low he could barely hear it. And so what he was getting is just this almost a hint of music, and it was mingling with the sounds of the ward around him, and he was powerless to turn it up. So he thought, I'll just kind of experience it like this. And he goes, this is interesting. Like other people just go, that's bloody annoying. Was that? Oh, sorry. Well, where's that Muppet gone who just put the record on? But he just kind of went with it and went, that's interesting.
Yeah, cool, man. Like it's sort of an earworm that's going to get good.
Well, what he did was he invented the entire genre of ambient music as a result.
Ah,
So he created an album called Discrete Music that was designed to be played almost inaudibly, so just on the edge of being audible.
yes.
And it mixes with your environment. And then that led on to the famous ambient albums like Music for Airports, which I still listen to quite a bit. And that was by listening to himself and noticing, whereas other people would just, if they were noticed they were hoovering to the music, not listening to the music, they'd probably tell themselves off for it, or like, I don't know what, but they wouldn't have the same acceptance and therefore wouldn't get the same inspiration.
It makes me think of the cracks between the content, which is why there's so much power in silence, actually, because it's the bridging.
Right, yeah.
That's where I went then. I'll come back.
No, I get you, yeah.
I get you. So I think we might be on to two things that never fail to grab your attention. And again, if there's any overlap, because I appreciate it's not just a delineated thing. So two things that never fail to grab your attention.
I don't know. Well, I think just any new take on something, basically. I've got back into Twitter during the pandemic. I got about 5,000 followers organically. I was a member from 2008 or something, and then just got completely bored of it, and then became a Facebook addict. And then I went back to it during the pandemic, and I'm just fascinated by. I do feel like it makes me smarter, actually. But you have to follow the right people for that to happen. Because
I'll have a look at your thread, because I'm still quite frustrated by Twitter, because I just feel I end up just broadcasting as opposed to finding the time to actually.
Well, no one is. I mean, I might as well not tweet anything. I mean, I pay no. I don't try to use it as a marketing tool at all.
Oh, you're just pioneering on it then? You're just staying.
I'm just reading it for. I mean, basically, I got into it during the pandemic because I was following virology Twitter. So I basically followed a whole bunch of people. I got a list called Humanity versus Corona as well, which is public. You can follow that on. I'm John SW on Twitter, and it's full of virologists, but it's also had a lot of entrepreneurs in there who I really respect, like Naval Ravikant, people might not know his names, Paul Graham, but in the startup scene in America, Shyam Puri, now I'd add the name to, and Balaji Srinivasan, I think his name is. They're all American startup entrepreneurs. Most of them are multimillionaires, if not beyond that. And really smart. And the reason I followed them during the pandemic was because I found that entrepreneurs were the best filter on the pandemic. So this brings us back around to our point where I was saying I like science and it excites me. Science is about reality. It's, the facts don't matter what your opinion is about them. You can say, I don't believe in gravity. You can say COVID's not real, but it doesn't make it go away. It's, the evidence really is overwhelming because there's a lot of conspiracy theories around with COVID. You can say, I don't believe in gravity, but if you jump off my balcony, it's really going to hurt. So it's gone 4 floors up. So it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. And that's the nature of science. It's the search for reality. And that's what I got from my physics qualification. That it's a very powerful thing. And as a marketer, entrepreneurs understand the value of reality. If you're disconnected from reality, now you might want to be wildly optimistic, but you don't want to be incapable of hearing what the market is saying.
Yes.
So if you put your thing out to the market is completely underwhelmed by it. That is important data which you need to use.
Yes, it's telling
there
you
is an
something
overlap in science. Sorry.
It's telling you something in its feedback. If it's silence and deafening, then you're doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't run away from that. You need to do something. And just the same way that science goes, we thought we were going to get cold fusion or fusion this way. But now what if we, turns out that was a complete dead end, but we reckon this way might work. They're actually working on fusion in a facility.
Well, it's like the quote, ancient and very familiar, of how Edison invented the light bulb, but he only did it. He invented it once, but he didn't invent it about 1,000 times before.
Yeah,
all of that. I'm just getting a slight lick on because of my job to get us to the clearing succession of the route map. So one quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know until you tell us, John Williams.
I'm a grade 4 figure skater.
Oh, get in.
Actually, I'm not anymore. I can still skate if I remind myself, but I did figure skating as a child, and I don't know why, but for some reason I didn't do any sports. So my mum went, okay, if it's figure skating, I'm going to drive in there.
I like how wonderfully random that is, because that's such a great fact, and I was very surprised by it.
I just liked it. I remember John Peel saying, the DJ for Radio 1, famously saying he loved football because he can't dance, and football was the only time he felt what's the word? I forgot, completely forgotten the word, but like what do you call it? Eloquent in your body. God, my brain's not working.
Mobility, or
no, but it's sort of like
motility,
elegant. Anyway. Elegant, or sort of, like your movement actually is good. Jeez,
I get what you're trying to say. So yes, so you're able to apply. What
figure skating was a bit like that. It was like, I think it was this thing I could do, and I couldn't do other sports, and it felt good to do, so I did it.
Was it muscle memory? Was that where you're going? Muscle memory?
No. It's
like, let's you can Twitter about it later. We're both having a senior moment. Thinking, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what he's talking about either. What are we both talking about? So that's all lovely. So I love the fact, though, that you're a figure skater. That's really and grade 4 get you. What grade could we have got to, please? If you...
I don't know. It does go quite high. I think grade 4 is pretty basic. But I could skate backwards and do some quite elegant kind of stuff.
And I'm really good at ping pong, by the way. Terrible at what you've just described. You're good at. I would just have to put the skates on my backside and just give it up, really. So that's all good. So I think we've shaken your tree, and so now we're moving away from the tree and staying in the clearing. And now we're going to talk about alchemy and gold. Again, you've been giving this and inferring it anyway. But when you are at purpose and in flow, John Williams, what is the alchemy and gold that you most know that you're bringing or like to bring?
And by that, do you mean like what am I good at, or the results I create, or?
It's open to interpretation deliberately. There's always an invitation to go deep, but it's open to interpretation from the point of, what are you happiest doing?
Hmm.
Therefore, and you're all over the purpose stuff, I know. So it's when you feel like you're most purposed, I suppose.
Uh, I like it when I can help somebody create something that is unlike anything else that exists out there. So I was helping a client this morning with a course she's creating for adults around dyslexia, and how we came up with a really good name. But I won't reveal just yet because she might want to go register it or something. But it was just that moment when he come up with like, oh, that's a good, oh my God, that's a good name. But it's a good name because it represents something. So her message, she's a captain, she's a pilot, and a lot of people in the aviation world don't like to admit they're a dyslexic, but she's public about it. And she's flown. She was trying to fly all the way around the world. She got stopped because war broke out in Iran. But she does all sorts of remarkable things. But she wants to now bring across this message, which is dyslexia is not a deficit; it's a positive.
Yeah.
And so the course is all around that. And that really, we just Googled it now. Everything's for kids, nothing's for adults. And if they are for adults, it's very kind of education based and dealing with your deficits. It's not, hey, do you realize that dyslexics are actually better than everybody else? That's kind of the message of her course.
And that's such a lovely example of literally striking gold to the alchemy of your approach. So I
Yeah.
love that. Have you also heard the delicious allegory that I've mentioned before on the show? Never fully explained it. So if you haven't heard it, I'll unfold on it. But have you heard of the expression, the diamonds beneath your feet?
It rings a bell. I think I've heard of it.
So if I may, and again,
Mm.
this is grandma's eggs and open your mouth, here comes an egg, but because I know you're all about storytelling as well, but there's it's an allegory of an apocryphal story of a South African drought farmer. And just to be clear, he's not farming drought, but everything's dying around him. His crops are dying, his cattle are dying. And every day he opens up the newspaper and is getting really jealous of everyone out there else who's doing the equivalent of the Californian gold rush and prospecting for diamonds. And so he thinks, oh, I've had enough of this. Sells his farm and off he goes. And then the person he sells the farm to, the first day of walking around their new farmstead, finds this thing on the ground and he puts it on his mantelpiece. And then a few weeks later, someone comes to visit. And to use the title of your book, by the way, the first word, the person picks it up and goes, well, fuck me, that's the biggest diamond I've ever seen. So they start digging beneath his feet of
Yeah.
tragically not the farmer, but the person he sold it to, and it
Yeah.
becomes apocryphally, and it's been applied to different domains, but it's apocryphally the most successful and most prolific diamond mine ever in South Africa. So
Amazing.
for us, in terms of the world of purpose, it's this idea that we're not necessarily barking up the wrong tree. If you keep digging, the diamonds are beneath your feet.
Yeah.
If you're connected to purpose. And indeed this podcast of itself has come about of me digging deeper for what else I might bring to the world in terms of my own spin on alchemy and gold, if you like.
Mm. Yeah. No, I like it.
So thank you for alchemy and gold. I'm going to award you with a cake now, John Williams, if I may. And this is a multi-layered cake. So again, it's slightly complex, and I normally avoid multiple questions, but it is this idea of it's your cake. So before I shove it in your filly fally face with you to put a cherry on it, what flavour cake do we want, first of all? Do you like cake?
Golden syrup, maybe.
Ew. Okay, it's your cake. You can have what you like. But anyway, you're going to put a cherry on your cake. Now, this is where it could be the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and or it could be a favorite inspirational quote that's always pulled you towards your future, and inspired by a bit of Shakespeare and all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their entrances and their exits, and each man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. It's legacy and how, John Williams, when all is said and done, would you most like to be remembered?
Mm. Yeah. Do you
So,
want me to answer all three?
yes, please. Just riff on that and see where it takes you.
The first thing, actually, I was thinking of a piece of something my brother said a few years ago. And he said, he puts things in very simple terms, but he's been in marketing and product management his whole life, for lots of household brands that you would have heard of. And he said, marketing's just thinking from the buyer's perspective, from the other person's point of view. And there's a lot of profundity in that simple statement, because we get caught up in the cleverness of marketing and all the hacks and tricks that we know work and can be a little bit manipulative, but they can be useful. But we forget that actually marketing is about what we're really bad at as human beings, which is thinking from the other person's point of view. So here's the buyer. What's going on in their head? What do they really want? What are they worried about? When they wake up, what's bugging them? When they think about this problem that they've got that you can help them with, how do they describe it? What language do they use? Most people have no concept of how to answer those questions and don't even think of them.
Is your brother
So,
Seth Godin, by the way? Because he says a lot of stuff similar to that.
yeah, Seth Godin's great. No, my brother David Williams.
Clue is in your surname, I know.
So I think that's a very good tip. And it's one, I call it empathy marketing. I put a fancy term on it, but it's basically thinking from the buyer's perspective. And we are tragically bad at it. So, and then what was the second thing?
Notes you might give to a younger version of yourself.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, it's John again, you're thinking.
Get on with it. Yeah, probably. It's just the stuff I teach now, which is basically create one offer of something people really want. Like take your expertise, put it in one thing people really want, and just concentrate on flogging that. And because you can get to $1 million turnover just selling one course, one-to-one package or something like that. So, in terms of using my expertise, that would have been my advice. And then just keep it really, really simple and don't worry about product funnels and selling millions of different things. And then do everything else as a hobby for the time being, because I'm a scanner, somebody with lots of ideas and interests. So as a scanner, I have to have lots of variety.
I like that expression. I get it. The scanner. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lots of frequencies, lots of tabs open simultaneously.
Yeah.
Lovely. And then Shakespeare, please. How would you most like to be remembered? Don't have a nap at this point. Because you've gone a bit quiet.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. He was funny. I don't know if I've demonstrated that in this conversation, but that's a high value for me. Yeah, he helped a lot of people, which I think I have done at this point.
And if I may, and this is a genuine compliment, you seem very relaxed and at ease with yourself as well, which is a lovely sort of elixir of different qualities to bring to the fore there.
Yeah, I was talking to this client today we were talking about dyslexia. And I said, the biggest thing people are going to get from your course, but it's not why they'll buy it. The biggest thing they'll get from it is realizing they're not broken. By being dyslexic, you're not a flawed, broken individual. You're actually in some ways better than other people. We might not put that language in the sales page, but and I said, it's taken me, because I described all these things, because I'm not dyslexic, I don't think, but I have some of those traits. Like I'm late for everything, terrible at time management, can't prioritize, can't manage lists of tasks, can't do forms, hate tedious finance, bad at tracking numbers, you name it, like loads and loads of stuff, which you think would mean there's no way I can run my own business. But now I kind of go like, actually, that's quite normal for a creative entrepreneur. That's actually bang on the traits for somebody who loves starting things and getting things off the ground. And my skills are outside of that. And I just pay other people to do those things. So, but it's taken me 55 years to get to that point. It does.
And I love that appreciation of when you end and somebody else begins. We can't be good at everything, and we're not as good at multitasking as we think we are.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to say in your moment in the sunshine here in the Good Listening To show clearing?
If anyone's interested in the things I'm talking about, I guess I can recommend my book, FY Let's Play, Do What You Love and Get Paid for It, because it's really good. So I don't often say that about my own work, but I'm very proud of that book, and it's been translated into 10 languages now. And it was W.H. Smith Business Book of the Month, so I seem to be on the right track. And I have a Facebook group. It's free to join, called F Work Let's Play, spelled in the same way as the book title. So you can come find me on there. And there's a website, fworkletsplay.com, which is actually just the letter F, Work Let's Play. And there's all sorts of free stuff you can sign up on there, which will help you if you want to work for yourself. And you already do, and you want to market yourself better.
And as we're going deep on your URLs, what about Twitter? At who?
On Twitter, like I say, I'm a little lackadaisical about Twitter, but I'm John SW, JOHN SW, S for Spencer. That's my middle name. And I'm also on Instagram. You can't forget Instagram. It's just, I'm on everything. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I'm usually John SW. And if I'm not, I'm John W. London. So you'll probably find me if you determine. Yeah, actually, you can get all the links on fworkletsplay.com.
Boom. So John Williams, thank you so much for taking time to speak to me here in the Good Listening To Show Clearing. I've been Chris Grimes. This is John Williams. Thank you very much indeed. And good night.